We're ready to go.
We ready?
I hope. We'll see. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the AMATS Policy Committee to order. Date is July 27th, 2023. And let's get a roll call. Do I do that or is it?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Typically.
I am here. Is it Mr. Cross?
Here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Boland?
Here.
Here. Mr. Coles is here. Is Emma, Ms. Polkin? Standing for her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me a leaning for Ms. Polkin.
Gotcha. Do have a quorum. All members are present. And Aaron, will you do the public involvement announcement, please?
Yes, sir. AMATS committee meetings are open to the public. The public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by a staff or consultant, then the committee is given an opportunity to ask questions. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You should have an agenda in front of you there as well. Any questions on that, or if not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
So moved and seconded. Mr. Frost. Okay, any objections? Any further discussion required? Okay, agenda is approved. Thank you for that. And for the minutes, agenda item 4, we do have the minutes before us from June 22nd, 2023 for approval. And
I'll move to approve the minutes from June 22nd, 2023. Mr. Boland.
okay, gotcha. Okay, any further discussion or changes, inputs related to the minutes? Okay, and any objections? Hearing none, June 22nd, 2023 minutes are approved. And moving on to item 5, action items. Update for Reconnecting Communities grant. Aaron, you presenting on that?
Yes, I will. Okay, thank you, everyone. So first item we have is the UPWP update for the 22-23 UPWP. So you may find this very familiar because it's similar to what we had in the recently approved 24-25 UPWP, but we need to add some additional discretionary grant language to the 23 UPWP. That's the exact same copy of the information added to the 24-25 UPWP. This is for the discretionary grants that are, part of the new infrastructure bill. One was received by NeighborWorks Alaska, and so for the Reconnecting Community Grant, I found out after we had the 24-25 UPWP approved that they were actually going to receive the funding in fiscal year 23, so we need to update the fiscal year 23 UPWP. So we're just copying and pasting the same language and then asking for approval. The Technical Advisory Committee also recommends approval of the UPWP narrative with this updated language. And the language is both in the memo in front of you and the narrative itself on page 10. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from the committee?
So would you need somebody to make a motion to include this language in the memo into the UPWP?
Yes, after we do the public comment. Yes, sir.
There's nothing from the committee. Are there any public comments related to this agenda item? Okay, seeing, hearing none. Since it was approved and recommended by the committee, do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, they'll need to make a motion.
So I'll make that motion. So it's just that quoted part right here.
Yes, sir. Just adding the portion in the memo that says discretionary grants within the AMATS area and all the language underneath that.
Great.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any objections or further discussion required? Hearing none. Takes us then to item 5B. It's the Alaska Department of Transportation Public Facilities Carbon Reduction Strategy. Are you presenting on that one?
Really quickly, and then we'll switch over to the actual presenters. Just to give you guys a heads up before we get started on what this is, DOT came asking for some time on the TAC and Policy Committee agenda to present on this item. The Technical Advisory Committee did see this item on their agenda, and they recommended that the PC schedule a work session for the TAC and PC to take this item up in more detail. So just a heads up on that. And then we have two members here from the project team who will give a brief little explanation presentation. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, you guys can come sit up here if you want, whoever is presenting.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Renee Whitesell, and although I am the overall consultant project manager on this project, I'm not actually the one slated to present. They went over to the permit center, so they're driving here right now. So I can start if you'd like, or if you wouldn't mind, if we could flip the agenda around, then you'll get the real talent.
So this is the only other action item we have.
Okay. Cool. Well, how about I kick into it, and as soon as they arrive, I'll hand over to the people that really know what they're talking about.
That'll work.
Great. All right. So just as an introduction and overview, we do have a brief presentation. Do you have copies of that in front of you?
We do.
You do. Excellent. Okay, so we are supporting the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities in developing their first carbon reduction strategy. Sorry, I keep turning around because I'm hoping they'll show up. And this is a needed strategy that has been introduced as a consequence of the bipartisan infrastructure law. The intention is to have the final carbon reduction strategy developed and ready for its federal highway review period in October of 2023. So we are here supporting Alaska DOT as they develop it. And what we are doing right now is we're moving through a process of outreach to relevant metropolitan planning organizations, of which you're the policy committee for AMATS. So we do have a selection of questions that we would like your feedback on. And then once we gather that information, that will move into us developing the draft strategy itself, which will be followed by a public comment period that does include an open house meeting. So I'll get you to move over to the next slide, which covers the purpose and eligible projects. So there are a range of projects that are covered by this, and what I will say straight up is that this is not my core business. So really what is set out on the slide here is the key, and we do have environmental specialists right on their way. What we are looking at is eligible projects, including transportation alternatives, complete streets projects, congestion management and technology solutions, projects that are focused on energy consumption and reductions, any best practices that can be incorporated into construction activities, and also developing a range of planning and performance measures against which the DOT can begin to benchmark and measure their performance over time as they move towards carbon reduction goals. So that is really what the strategy is seeking to line out in further detail. There are a range of specific carbon reduction strategy requirements and goals. Requirements are as listed in the top three boxes there. The strategy itself is seeking to support efforts and identify projects and strategies to support the reduction of transportation emissions. And one of the goals that's being outlined there is to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips within the state. There is a requirement at the state's discretion to quantify total carbon emissions from production, transport, and the use of materials used in the construction of state transportation facilities. still not here. Hopefully I'm going okay. And the goal that they've got set out there is to facilitate the use of vehicles or modes of travel that result in lower emissions. And a third requirement is to be appropriate to the population density and context of the state, including any metropolitan planning organisations designated within the state, and to facilitate approaches to construction that will result in lower carbon emissions. So in the Alaska context, I'm sure you're all very aware that we're really dealing with a state that is very unique from a transportation perspective. We do have a clustering of population within the greater Anchorage, Wasilla area and through onto the Kenai. And then as you disperse outwards, really the transportation network and population density becomes much more dispersed. So it really does create a challenge in terms of addressing the transportation needs across the state. But what it also means is that it's really important that we look at all of the different modes that we use for transportation, because as a state, we are far more reliant on aviation than most other states that provide day-to-day transportation. We do have a good range of on-road facilities, but they really are clustered and focused on our population centres. We also are one of the only states that has a marine transportation network that actually is part of our national highway system. Essentially, it acts in place of a roadway network. And we do have other modes, including rail, non-motorized, etc., that we're factoring in. So the slide that you have in front of you here, which has a couple of pie charts, really is a summary of the carbon existing conditions. And these are the people that know so much more about this than me, so I am totally going to sub out and let you jump in.
I'm sorry. Thanks for covering for us.
Good job.
Yeah, push you. You're doing great.
I bet you was. We're fired.
Yeah, so welcome. You're welcome to scroll back a little bit if you think someone thinks you want to get there, but you're also welcome to pick up whatever.
Do you mind if I go back to the slide with the strategies? I'm sure Renee did awesome.
Real quick, can you state your name and who you're with for the record, please?
My name is Teresa Duchek. I'm an environmental specialist with Dell.
I'm Adam Morrill, also an environmental specialist with Dell.
Thank you.
So the slide before this, I know Renee went over the overarching schedule for this project. This is kind of the meat of it right here. There are 4 kind of project types that are eligible for CRP funding, carbon reduction program funding, and they're outlined right there in the law. We grouped project types into these 5 strategies. The top 4 are design and construction related. The 5th one is a little bit more planning oriented. So our overarching strategies at this point are transportation alternatives and complete streets, congestion management and technology solutions, energy consumption reduction, and then reduction of carbon emissions from construction practices. The smaller text that you see in each of those kind of bullet outlines are the project types that we're proposing underneath the strategy. So these are going to be the kind of projects that will be eligible under each strategy. I will note that on this slide, there are some project types that may or may not make it in terms of pertinence to Alaska, like HOV lanes or ramp metering, but we have them on there right now as a demonstration. It will be a goal to discuss these strategies and project types somewhat regionally in Alaska. There's going to be differences in Southeast Alaska in terms of fueling infrastructure and differences in congestion in different areas as well. So there may be better strategies for different regions, and we are determined to get that in with the remaining time that we have to drop this strategy. Okay, next slide, please. And so I suspect that Renee went over these in detail, and I, in fact, was just going to read this slide as well. So I think that we can move on to the next one.
This one here just shows the road network and the transportation connectivity here in Alaska. Part of the strategy is to focus it in on the state and the specific issues that we have. And one of the issues that we've got is the road system doesn't connect over 80% of our communities. It's the aviation system that does that. the funding's only for the road system. And so that's one of the things that we've got to address in the strategies is that we're just focusing on the road, and there's other ways that we could maybe do that if we could target other things. And yeah, we could move on to the next one. And as Renee was getting into this, we've gone through and looked at some of the specifics here in Alaska and compared it also with the nation. One of the things to note is in 2020, the economic sectors, industry was the highest here in Alaska, and transportation second, where in the lower 48, transportation takes up about 80% of all economic sectors, and then broken down by industry and the energy sector are the next two. So that's one of the reasons why the carbon reduction strategy focuses on road transportation, is because it's the largest one for the nation, where it's the second here in Alaska. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to highlight to get to an Alaska-based strategy. Then specifically for the transportation in itself, aviation is about 27% or 71%, and on-road is 27%. That's 2015. DEC, they had a report that they just published a few months ago. And in there, we've got 2018 data, and it's fairly similar. The aviation is up to 78% and transportation's down to 21%. But for the most part, it's fairly similar to what's shown there in 2015. Go to the next one. So this is what we anticipate funding for the next through 2026 would be the metropolitan planning areas would have 29 million, small urban and rural areas 24 million, and then the remainder 28.6 million would be divvied up around the state as DOT sees fit for projects that come in and qualify for the funding. One of the things to note is these numbers are subject to change, and the Matsu Valley, they're looking to start up an MPO, and so the small urban and rural and the MPO numbers will change according to that. But basically the numbers are based on a percentage based on population and how that's divvied up. Next slide. And then this is what was in the STIP previously. I understand it's been updated recently, but this kind of shows how things are broken out between the MPOs and statewide right now. Next slide.
So going back to the schedule, this is a tighter breakdown of tasks that we are looking to accomplish in order to meet this November 15th FHWA approval deadline. So where we are right now is kind of data analysis and preparing some calculations of project carbon reduction offsets and meeting with the MPOs. So that's currently where we are in the process. We are also drafting the plan and expect to have a preliminary draft to DOT August 15th. So that really is coming up. So we are looking forward to getting more feedback from MPOs. We reached out to FAST on May 3rd and May 17th. AMATS is ongoing, July 13th and July 27th. Following the production of this PowerPoint, we have also scheduled a meeting with the freight committee, the AMATS freight committee for mid-August. The draft plan will be published for public and MPO and stakeholder review in September, and will undergo a 30-day comment period. We are preliminarily planning for 2 public meetings, one here in Anchorage and then one up in Fairbanks. Those are preliminary plans at this time. We expect to finalize the plan following that 30-day comment period and have a final published plan October 23rd. That will allow for some negotiation back and forth with FHWA and DOT to meet that November 15th deadline. Next slide, please. So on the screen are a number of questions to mull over, but essentially what we are looking for is for this plan to be a holistic representation of carbon emission reduction strategies throughout the state of Alaska. With that being said, it is really important for us to know what AMATs may be planning or strategies or project types that are specific to the Anchorage Bowl and the AMATs area or the AMATs area. So that's the kind of feedback that we're really looking to incorporate in the plan. We do understand that there are some projects that are already proposed for carbon reduction funds. And so we want to make sure that those types of projects are discussed in this plan. So next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. Apologies so much for being late. The contact information is on the screen, and we do have a story map website that incorporates a location to provide feedback for the public and anybody else who chooses to do so. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the committee?
Can we go back to the slide that had the breakdown of the fund? Yeah. So I guess my question is, so you guys are going to be putting together strategies, but we do have some, like you alluded to, some projects already on our tip that kind of get at this stuff. Is this, I think it's a question for Aaron, really, how does this intersect with the tip? Is this new money that we're going to be getting that we haven't received, or we've already programmed all of these funds?
Yeah, we've already programmed all of our CRP funding through 2026 because we got the notice back in when we were developing the 23 through 26 tip. So we've already applied and have all of it programmed out.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Hey, yeah, this is Danny from DEC. I just want to re-echo what I said during the TAC meeting. I did say that looking at all the eligible projects, or the #1 project seems to align with what I said during the meeting. I'll just recap quickly here. Reducing the total fuel consumption of on-road vehicles is a very good strategy through congestion mitigation and adopting or shifting to transportation, fuel-efficient transportation modes like transit and the funding of pedestrian facilities. That is a very good project that could help. And now the VMT reduction, reducing total number and length of vehicle trips, could help with the reduction of carbon print, as we had from the transit director. That was about 3 months ago. They can recall very well during the presentation. We were told that the carpooling or vanpooling is a very huge success here in Mini. About 545 single occupancy vehicles were converted to 93 van pools, and interestingly, the 93 van pools achieve about 6.2 million vehicle miles. That's huge. When converted to CO2 reduction, it gave about 4.98 million reduction in our CO2 emissions, and that's close to about 2,258 metric tons, and that's huge. So we're thinking that if more funds could go to van pool programs, we could achieve a lot. If 93 could give us 6.2 million reduction in vehicle miles, imagine if you have more funds and we have more than 93 van pools, we could have achieved a lot. So for the electrification of vehicles, my reaction to that, as I mentioned during the meeting, is that strategy might not be too popular among the low income and the disadvantaged communities because of the cost. Yeah, and specifically to, realistically speaking, except we have renewable energy to power these, charging stations, we won't have any zero emissions. What we would have in the real sense of it is the shift of emissions from the tailpipe to the power stations, as my colleague who is here present is an expert in that GHG would say is a shift in emissions. And also, my deputy commissioner and I discussed this a few days ago, and she said, well, there's the issue of supply chain as well. Currently, as we speak, we have shortage of raw materials, and in the next couple of years, we might have a shortage of lithium and cobalt, which are used in producing, electrical vehicles. So this might not be an efficient, strategy, looking at it from a holistic point of view. So I would, like I pointed out earlier, go for, the support the transit and the bump programs. Like I said, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just a scientist, but we have an expert in the room, and it's time for the public to speak. You can check, more context or throw more context on the website. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I would not, it's okay. As the assembly member who represents our downtown core, one of the things that I saw on your slide that I'm really excited about was that complete streets could be would fall within this, and for a number of reasons: quality of life, public health, carbon emissions, but also commerce. That's something that I'm really excited about. And we have some studies. Are those CRP funds that are being used for like the A&C couplet study that are now? But needless to say, we're looking at the A&C couplet, the I&L couplet, which both go through downtown. I think planning department is going to be working with traffic soon to start the downtown engineering or downtown streets engineering study. So just want to put on your radar that anything that involves complete streets and having, people be able to make transportation choices for themselves, to safely drive or walk or roll, bike, etc. Something I'm very excited about.
Sorry, so I'm sorry, I have one more question. I have a question now. Considering that the aviation sector produces about 72% of the GHG emissions, do you have any ideas on what efforts the federal agencies are doing to, reduce this GHG emissions from the sector? The aviation sector is about 72%. We're just talking about the on-road sector, so we need to know what the efforts are the federal agencies are making reducing this huge GHG emissions from all the aviation sector.
Question.
Yeah, that's a question.
I regret to say I haven't looked into the aviation sector and federal guidelines or programs to reduce the carbon emissions from the aviation sector.
Arthur?
I guess the only question I'd throw out of your slide where you were looking for feedback or discussion from AMAT specific. Happen now, or is there another venue that we would discuss some of that? Those are fairly comprehensive questions.
Yeah, it can happen now if the committee wants, or the TAC I know had pretty lengthy discussion on it, and then they recommended that the TAC and PC get together at a work session sometime in August to discuss it more and kind of maybe flesh out any recommendations or feedback they would want to give. If that would be the case, then I would recommend we do it early enough in August to get it back on the PC agenda in August to get it to the group before, it's too late,
Right.
if possible.
That makes sense. Okay, anything more from the committee? Okay, how about from the public? Any comments or
My
questions?
comment is I can hardly hear anything anybody is saying. We cannot hear you.
Especially when you're looking like we haven't heard anything said. Everybody's talking really softly. There's a big.
Everyone's talking softly, she said.
Yeah, we can't hear.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry. Each person is limited to 3 minutes to speak in this. So you'll need to state your name for the record, And then I'll start the time for 3 minutes if you would like to speak.
Rich is making a comment. I wasn't trying to give. Well, you said.
Comments are also considered part of that 3 minutes of speaking as well.
Yeah, I can go first if you want to, at the time we're ready.
Well, okay, well, excuse me, but can you turn this up or can you put this closer? Where's a microphone or something that's close enough to people so we can hear, please?
We don't have one, so you guys will just have to speak up as loud as you can.
Okay, we apologize.
Yeah, we'll try to speak up.
Thank you. Okay, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Todd Lindley. I'm a resident of District 4 in Anchorage, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Alaska and Wyoming, with 14 years of experience in the field of mechanical engineering. I'm here today to voice my opposition to the carbon reduction strategy and urge each of you to stop this discussion and cancel the contract and any other engineering firm with this work. I'm not offering amendments or suggestions. No is and should be a perfectly acceptable answer. On page 3 of this PowerPoint presentation, there are 3 goals listed. For my review of the presentation, what I want to know is for the $82 million of federal taxpayer money, what carbon are we going to reduce? Is it the 0.04% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere we are currently breathing and needed for plants to grow for the food we eat? Is it the 2 carbon molecules used in every bit of PVC plastic for piping, for roads, for any number of other hydrocarbon that we have there? Is it the 75% in natural gas that heats your home, or the fuel to run the power turbines to provide the electricity? Or maybe the 85% in the gasoline in each of yours in my vehicle parked outside? Or maybe it's the 18% that makes up the human body. Surely the last one can't be the case. Maybe it's just a coincidence that the human body is made up of carbon. To state that your objective is to reduce carbon is intellectually irresponsible and morally corrupt. Even more irresponsible is the fact that the engineering company you hired to put this program together is participating in a lie by stating that carbon and CO2 are bad. Nothing in this presentation indicates that the money spent will actually achieve the desired result. If anything, these goals do more to restrict individuals' liberty to travel freely, which is in conflict with the mission statement of DOT. The State of Alaska Board of Engineers and Land Surveyors Code of Conduct states that in order to establish and maintain a high standard of integrity to safeguard the life, health, property, and welfare of the public are binding upon every individual holding a certificate. A registrant shall act with complete integrity in professional manners and may not participate or may not practice if the registrant's professional competence is substantially impaired. The strategy presented today is based on a lie that carbon and CO2 are bad and must be reduced. And the only way to reduce said carbon and CO2 is spend millions of dollars on a program that has no measurable or achievable goal. Clear example of being substantially impaired. For all the professional engineers in the room and on the line, the credibility of our profession is in jeopardy if we consent to this lie. I do not consent, I do not approve, and I object to this entire program. I will be filing a complaint with the Board of Engineers for any of the registered engineering companies or individuals involved in this program because this presentation violates the professional code of conduct for knowingly engaging in professional practices that are fraudulent and dishonest. It is not because I want to see you fail, it's because I respect the effort it takes to become a registered professional engineer, and I hope this is a wake-up call for you all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sherry Coburn. I live in South Anchorage. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm pretty outraged that we are at this point in our state, in our country, in our community. You know, everybody's saying CO2 is bad, you know, the sky's falling, everybody's running around with their hair's on fire. It's not bad. We need it. Did you know that our planet Earth did not have enough carbon emissions, and us using carbon emissions has actually helped the planet? And the CO2, a third of the amount of carbons we've used has only happened in the last 18 years. We are on a complete train wreck trying to go ahead and stop this, and it's not going to stop anything. Carbon is in the air. It's like, how are you going to gather feathers in the wind? This conversation is insanity. I don't even understand why we're doing this. We need plants. We won't eat without plants and food. We need it. Our bodies need it. This whole thing, to say that it causes pollutants is an absolute absurdity because it doesn't. And I just, everybody's talking about net zero. Well, you can't have net zero. You're not going to stop the planes. Let's stop and review. We live in Alaska. What are we going to do if we get rid of people's cars? What's grandma going to do out on a bus corner at 20 below, waiting for transit? That's ridiculous. Be real. We live in Alaska. We have different situations than any other place. And this is absolute. It's not going to work. It's not right. You need to stop. And I would like somebody in this room to show me the data that says this is a problem. They've all come out and globalists and everybody's got their hand in the fire, but nobody, if it was so science, they used no scientific methods to make this determination. If it was so scientific and it was so real and it was so dangerous, there would be something written about it. Show me something written that says carbon emissions are dangerous. You can't. Or if you can, I want to see it. I want this needs to stop because it's not going to do anything. I care about the kids. What are we going to leave our kids? How can we stop cars? We're not going to stop the planes. How are we going to get food here in this state without planes? And planes use way more emissions than cars do. The thing that you're talking about with limiting the cars it's not even going to be significant enough to measure. So what are we talking about here, people? This is an outrage. Stop. Just stop. The only thing we're doing is, federal money. Let's get federal money. And we can go along with this big charade. It's a Ponzi scheme. How come the president of Vera stepped down? Because he said this is a complete fraud. The United Airlines pilots have come out and said this is a fraud. They're in the air all the time. There's no global warming. No, your hair should not be on fire. Wake up. Stop the madness. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Sir?
Hi there. Thanks for making the time. My name is Con Milkey. I'm a resident in Eagle River. I just don't want to take too much time arguing some of the comments about carbon. As a young member of this community, I believe strongly in climate change, even just in the last, just last little while. This summer has been our hottest summer, or whatever it was, July on record in our entire history. It is shown in the current events right now. But just to put that aside, I'm very thankful that there's so many great conversations, so many great projects that got submitted to the SIP. I was just reading through that this morning, that the updated proposals on that. It was great to see. I appreciated the comments from the gentleman that talked about the rising costs of resources and other types of things in Alaska. As a plug-in hybrid owner, I just wanted to talk about how those have a reduction in the amount of materials that are used, and a lot of them are being imported into Alaska because of our unique situation, because of all of these are no longer in production down in the state, that some of those are being brought up here because they're no longer useful down there. But those short-range electric vehicle trips are so useful to our communities, where we have these small little pockets that are in between. There's places like Juneau, there's other communities that have hydroelectric power, other options for renewable electric power that make it much more feasible for shorter trips. Same thing with small scale personal electric vehicles. I have an e-bike. I have a lot of other personal electric vehicles making 8-minute trips and small trips that I can do on personal solar that make all my trips renewable, and those kinds of projects, and the ability to convert some of our trips to more, to even have the option of renewable power is very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm glad that thank you for having public comment, and I think it's needed. But yeah, my name is Peggy Beck, and I live in District 1. And number one, I would say that some years ago, our Anchorage Assembly stopped the carbon emission and pollutants coming from the automobiles, the emission tests. And it was said that Anchorage had been all cleaned up and we didn't need the emission tests anymore. So the Assembly took care of that and said, okay, let's get rid of those carbon emissions. So So why would they do that if now the assembly or certain members of the assembly, maybe the majority, are looking to reduce carbon here in Alaska? That's one thing. Second thing is there was a Nobel Prize winning scientist, Dr. John Clauser. He received his Nobel Peace Prize for physics in 2022, that was last year. And he was to talk at the International Monetary Fund, I guess just pretty recently.
July 22nd.
Oh, on July 22nd. That was pretty recent. And they canceled him. This Nobel Peace Prize person was going to come to the IMF and talk about climate change. He was talking about climate change, but the carbon credit aspect. And what he said, he was going to present a seminar on climate models to the IMF. And let's see, well, the bottom line is that he has criticized the 2001 Nobel Prize, Peace Prize for the development of computer models predicting global warming. And he told President Biden that he disagreed with his climate policies. He also said that he declared his climate dissent. There is no real climate crisis. He warns climate science has metastasized into a massive shock journalist pseudoscience. This is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And the third thing is, in junior high, or maybe it was in 6th grade, that was a long time ago, so I can't remember. But I learned that carbon dioxide was necessary for the plants so they could live, and they could then make oxygen, create and convert it to oxygen so that we could live. And I wonder what has changed about that. Didn't you all learn that too? Didn't you learn that in junior high or high school? Where in the hell did our science go? So I thank you for listening. And I refuse to comply also to any of the carbon credit crap going on, that if it's ever gone in. Oh yeah, and the other thing is oath of office. Public officials have to sign an oath of office to the United States Constitution and to the Alaska Constitution if you're in Alaska. Well, here we are. So this is can be a problem for people that are not doing the will of the people, which I don't think this has been happening to us because of the assembly, and I know that we've got a couple of new assembly members. I'm talking about what's been going on for years. Oath of office that you're going to follow the Constitution. That's not been followed, and there's repercussions for that. And okay, that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Todd Lance. I'm in District 4. I ran across an article by the Anchorage Daily News, and very fairly, you folks pointed out that on your PowerPoint presentation that the airline industry actually produces what 70, you tell me, 71% of the emissions in Alaska. I don't know why we're focusing so much on our streets when the assembly and all the big businesses and everything else is talking about, especially in this article, this was printed in 2021, about why Anchorage's International Airport is such a big cargo destination and how it needs to get even bigger. And it's getting bigger all the time, which means your latest PowerPoint said it was up to like almost 80%, right? Emissions. Isn't that where your focus should be? I mean, I don't think they're going to shut down the airport. That's big business worldwide. It takes up, like 400 cars worth of emissions to go between here and Fairbanks, as it is for one 747 to fly from here to Fairbanks. Now, I'm a little bit fuzzy with my math there, but it's very, very close. And we don't even fly 747s to Fairbanks. Usually they're 37s, they're smaller. The point being is we have a whole lot more air pollution out there regarding CO2 emissions flying in and out of the airport every damn day than we do with all of the people driving in and around Anchorage, it's really kind of silly. You know, so I'd like you to consider things and look at it. Sense isn't common anymore, but let's use some common sense. I can see where a lot of this can work. Some of it will help, but let's work on the low-hanging fruit. You know, let's work on the stuff that's the biggest chunk, the biggest problem, rather than screwing around. Construction site? I've been on a lot of construction sites, and yep, there's a lot of diesel. Sure there is, but you get a whole lot of power out of a diesel engine to move a lot of earth. And so far, from what I've read, they haven't figured out batteries and electric motors big enough to move that much earth to be able to do that. We've also got some great gas facilities that produces. Fortunately, we're not too heavy into the coal in this state as far as producing our energy that way. You know, all I'm saying is let's look at the big picture and not all the little stuff. You know, not so much the little stuff. Thank you very much.
Any more public comments?
Are you taking comments over the computer? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
My name's Cassie Andrews. I live in District 6. I'm opposed to any measure that uses federal tax dollars to reduce private ownership. This idea of CO2 being the metric for reduction, the science is not settled on this. We can take every car off of the road in the entire state and have no impact. And what is the cost to doing that for the citizen? The billions of dollars poured into the economy for carbon mitigation is to no known effect aside from massive inflation on the backs of our children and grandchildren. I'm urging this body to consider a presentation from an organization called the CO2 Coalition to understand more about this invincible boogeyman. To control carbon is to control people. This results in loss of liberty and freedom. Please reject the carbon reduction notion and the dollars within. This is the first critical step to preserving sovereignty in our city and state. Thank you.
Do you have anybody else online? Okay. Move on for public comments then. Any action items or anything more from the committee that's related to this topic?
Can we go back once more to the slide with the strategies or this one? Yeah, different color coded.
Yeah.
So I just want to take one more look at this and make sure nothing suggests shutting down the airport. Don't think it does.
Speak louder, please.
You bet. So I don't think any of these suggest shutting down the airport, these eligible projects. I also don't think that any of these eligible projects suggest taking people's private property, taking their vehicles from them. To me, this seems mostly to be about transportation choice. So I just want to state that for the record in response to some of the testimony that we heard. Thanks.
So I just want to add a little bit of context to the inspection and maintenance program that was discontinued by the Assembly a few years back. Apart from the high-end program, the van pool was one of the programs adopted by the Assembly and EPA to reduce CO emissions. And now the van pool program has continued to be one of the control measures used in reducing CO emissions here in Anchorage. And the program was adopted by the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. So the gentleman who spoke earlier said, the van pool is a voluntary program that has nothing to do with, collecting people's cars. If you want to participate in the transportation program, cool. If not, it's not mandatory. So, and there is nothing like shutting down airports as well. So all these programs are voluntary programs. And the van pool, like I said, has been in existence since, and is one of the measures adopted by the EPA for the CO reduction, emissions reduction. Just want to add a little bit of context. Thank you, sir.
Anything else on this item? Okay, we're still moving.
Mr. Cross, have a comment?
I can understand the concern, but more of a humanitarian crisis. I'm a little concerned about our continuing expanse of, precious metal mining in the Sudan and stuff, where the conditions are miserable. And I feel unless we can come up with a more reasonable, efficient way, shipping minerals from slave labor in the Sudan, places in China build batteries that get shipped across to Europe to build cars that then come get assembled in the United States to get distributed, doesn't seem like a very efficient energy model. I mean, I get it. I understand why we want to kind of protect the earth, but I think that we have a lot of work to do before we start mandating policies that have unintended consequences on the most vulnerable populations in the world.
Okay. Seems like we've kind of closed out this topic. No motions or anything associated, so we'll move on to the next steps. There's no more action items, I believe, Aaron, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Then we're up to updates. It looks like maybe you're providing some of those updates for us as well.
We'll have a couple of people providing updates.
Okay.
So the first item, the 6A 2050 MTP, actually Chelsea Ward-Waller, the project manager, will be doing a quick update on this project. Chelsea?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. And just a quick technical note, because of there's like a background noise when somebody joins, there's like a brief cutout when you all are speaking. So sometimes when you've been responding to somebody online, for example, they don't hear you initially when you respond. It's just a funny technical thing with the mics that we have, and I apologize for that. But just in case you're aware that folks can't always hear you when you're responding right when there's a noise with the computer. So getting onto the MTP, we are going to do our very best to get the Metropolitan Transportation Plan looking at 2050. So between now and 2050, our long range plan out for public comment starting next week. We're aiming for August 1st, but we're going to get it out next week regardless. It may be a couple days after August 1st, given some buttoning up some final details before we get it out. But we're aiming for August 1st. We're planning to do a 60-day comment period regardless of the day that we start that comment period. So we want to give folks lots of time to look over the entire draft document and give us lots of feedback because it's a big document and there's a lot to look at. We also are planning 2 in-person workshops. One will be in Anchorage and one will be in Eagle River to go over the plan and to help provide sort of one-on-one feedback. And then we'll also have a virtual public workshop that'll go through the plan and help sort of provide some background on it. In addition to that, we will be looking at having an assembly public hearing, which is part of the normal process for these large plans. We will also present it to the AMATS advisory committees. We'll bring it to the Federation of Community Councils. We will be holding our tribal consultation and our resource agency review during that time. Sorry, getting a little bit of an echo. And then after all of that public comment, we will be compiling all the comments that we get. And and bringing that to both the technical advisory and policy committees in a work session, aiming for October for that before November and December, ideally before life gets a little bit crazier closer to the holidays. But then we'll be presenting those public comments and responses to you all for your feedback in terms of changes we'll need to make for that final version of the document. So that's where we're at and where we're going with that right now.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? How about from the public? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, some of us, including myself, have gotten a little emotional here at this meeting. It is not that we don't appreciate your efforts and what you have as really good hearts. Everybody in this room wants to breathe clean air. We all want clean water. We want our neighborhoods to look beautiful. We want our plants to grow. We want our kids to grow up. We want our grandchildren to thrive. So don't let the emotions get in the way. We're just expressing our concerns out here because it seems like nobody is hearing. No, we're not always listening to each other. We're hearing one another, but we're not listening to one another. And I just want to thank you people for your efforts and what you're trying to accomplish. But I'm just hoping you step back and take a real world look at it and say, truly, what are we doing? And is the tail wagging the dog here? You know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, may I say something?
Sure.
Another thing is, it's really.
Say your name, please.
Oh, sorry, my name is Sherry Coburn, and sometimes it's really hard, like I have to get back to work, I have to give up my lunch to come to this meeting, but is there any way we could do some of these hearings in like after hours or sometime when more people have a chance to take part of this process? I know it's hard because you guys are working your job during the day, but it would be really nice to have at least some forum where it would be easier for people, but you have jobs, we're taking care of our families, it's really hard to be part of this process, but we want our voice to be heard, but this isn't the optimum situation. So if that's at all, anyway, anything you guys could consider to have some of the public comment be where the public can actually be there, where they're not having to take time off work. So that being said, I gotta get back to work, but if you could take under advisement, it would be very appreciated.
Well, thank you for that
Again,
input.
thanks for what you're doing.
Yep. And sir, thank you for your comments. Do appreciate that. I don't think any of us take any of this personally. It's a part of good dialogue. All right, moving on to 6B. Pilot of protected bike lanes in Anchorage.
Yes, so this is not actually an AMATS project, so I will not have to speak on it, but instead Colin Singleton will be here as this is a Municipality of Anchorage project in partnership with DOT. Thank you.
My name is Colin Singleton. I'm with CRW Engineering Group. Brad Coy, municipal traffic.
Yeah, municipal traffic engineer.
So I am leading the consultant team for a project that is a partnership between DOT and the municipality of Anchorage. It's a research project, essentially, that is paid for 100% by the bipartisan infrastructure law as part of the complete streets policy study. They received the grant for $1 million in March this year. And in June, CRW was contracted along with Kittleson and Associates and Huddle to explore the first implementation of a pilot to investigate installation of protected bike lanes. For those of you that don't know what a protected bike lane is, it's essentially a bike lane with some type of vertical separation between vehicles, similar to the example you can see on this handout that's available on the lower right corner. This is something that's been asked for widely throughout the community, and the opportunity to have a pilot is a means for us to have a discussion have the community have a chance to see what it would look like and provide comment for agencies to understand the costs that it would be required to implement these throughout Anchorage in a meaningful way. Our first project is on Pine to Carry, where there's currently a buffered bike lane where the bike lane is inside or closer to the travel lane than the parking along that route. And our project is looking at a temporary installation to swap those locations and add a vertical separation element. So a very small cost of installing that infrastructure, but a significant safety benefit that's been witnessed throughout the states, and a chance for the municipality to explore what the implications of that on maintenance, driveways, parking, things like that, and see how it could be implemented in future permanent projects. So there will also be a future phase of this in 2024 to explore 3 other routes where we could do this type of installation, and we'll be coordinating with MOA and DOT on where those routes might go, and are happy to keep you informed of that progress. There was a desire to have us work with the current DOT fireweed road diet project and potentially incorporate a pilot of protected bike lanes on that. That is still being discussed, how we can coordinate with that project team without short-circuiting public involvement. So, Brad, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that?
I think one thing that I'll add is this is a great way to learn how to do something. It's a research project that brings a consultant team in that can analyze. It's looking at what it takes, how to do it, and we're able to learn with the assistance of federal funding. So our staff that are going to be doing this will be able to build their time to the federal project. And so really the best way to do something new like this is to have better data, to have assistance evaluating it, have the funds that are intended for that purpose, and to do it in an incremental way. And so this first increment with primary carry is only intended for about a month of September. It's just the timing of everything. It allows for it's near some schools, so that'll be an interesting element to it. Next summer, it's intended to do more, ideally downtown, midtown areas, to do for the duration of summer, to involve businesses, to have more location discussion with the community, to figure out some of those details. At this point, we chose primary carry because it had the buffer already built in. You don't have to do anything to the striping. So good opportunity to learn valuable lessons. And we're just working through procurement, some of the other challenges that come with trying to do something quickly. But we're excited to see what we learn from it. Because really success in this case is learning something. Whether it's to learn that we don't want to do these again, or that we got to do something a little bit different. But we've had discussions with all of street maintenance and paint and sign shop and Parks and Rec and the different municipal organizations. And they're all interested in learning what this all involves and are supportive of this project.
Okay, thank you. Any committee questions, comments?
Sure. Well, I'm obviously very excited about this. And something I think is worth considering too, and Brad, you and I have talked about this, the concept of doing seasonal bike lanes. I think this could maybe give us information about, future investment when it comes to permanent. About, maybe we do summer bike lanes in certain locations in Anchorage. And I'll just note that this is something that this pilot project has a lot of community council support. I think downtown, South Addition, North Star, Spenard, Airport Heights, Rogers Park, quite a few community councils passed resolutions of support for this concept. So,
Sorry, Mr.
yeah,
I don't know if I mentioned it.
Midtown, a version that they passed as well. So pretty cool.
I see you're collecting data and whatnot, or the proposal is part of this. I assume you're able to assess traffic impacts and those kind of things versus it just be people's opinions, responses on whether they like it or not.
So to speak to that, one of the things we're looking at is collecting speed volume data that's typically gathered on streets. The other is to
That's vehicular.
That's vehicular. Yep.
Sure.
And also bicycle volume.
And also bicycle volumes, and then to be able to do that during the survey, during the study, during the actual implementation, and then also qualitative data, looking at intercept surveys, asking people who are using the facilities before how they could rate their comfort of the facility, and then speak to that during the actual implementation and see how those responses are different. And then also we capture some of the intersection activity via video collection, which is how we get our bicycle counts, and using that anecdotally to observe if there's conflicts between cars and bicycles at particular points.
Thank you.
Oh, I will just add, sorry, given that this installation is likely to, on Pine and McCary, is likely to occur in September, where bicycling is typically decreasing for the year. We're not hoping to have Pine McCary illustrate a bump in ridership, and that is the key that shows this is worthwhile. This first phase is really to investigate how a pilot could be installed, and the projects in 2024, which will have a longer duration, be installed in May, could potentially capture more of that volume increase or effect.
Any more committee comments on this topic? And again to the public? Hearing none, close out item 6B. I believe that completes our project plan and updates.
Yes, it does.
Okay, I'm not seeing any general information that's needed to be distributed.
I have one quick thing, sorry, just to give the committee a heads up, upcoming thing. We did just get our draft certification review from FHWA and FTA. So distributed to staff. Staff will be given a chance to provide comments back to them. And then in September, FHWA will come and present that to the policy committee. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you.
Moving on to committee comments. Any committee members have anything they'd like to share? Okay. Hearing none. For our last round of public comments, anybody have anything more to see? Yes, sir.
James Starzyk, DOT Planning. Just wanted to put it out there that the DOT&PF statewide transportation improvement program for 24-27 has been released for public comment. A lot of new information out there on projects, phasing, funding, all the way up to 2030, some of the illustrative ends. Looking for any and all input. So I don't have the website memorized yet, but pretty much every web page of DOTs will point you in the right direction. So please take time to look at the statewide transportation plan and submit your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, James. I'll just add on that yeah, on all those links, there's many different ways to look at it. We are using a new product now that provides a lot of different tables, a lot of ways to break down and display information based on legislative districts, census bureaus, all sorts of those things. They're definitely solicit feedback. Anything more public? Yes, ma'am.
Renee Whitesell with Dell, and I'll just say that I'm acting in my capacity supporting Alaska DOT, so just adding on to your statewide transportation improvement program. There is a virtual public meeting which provides an overview of the STIP and ways to comment that's being held next Thursday evening. Details of that are available on DOT's website, so that's a presentation and opportunity to ask questions and interactively provide feedback. In addition, there will be meetings held in key locations for DOT. There is going to be a meeting with Fairbanks, one in Anchorage, and one in Juneau. And the Anchorage meeting is scheduled to be held on August 9th between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m. And that will be coming through the official public notice system, hopefully today or tomorrow. So
Great, thank you. Yes.
Feedback on that, if you are still looking for a way to find that, we have linked that event for the virtual public house on the AMAS website. So in the right-hand corner, when you're on the main page, we have upcoming events. You can click on that and it will give you the link to that and the link to the STIP website with all the other information.
Last chance, any more public comments? Okay, and that brings us to adjournment time. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. So Mr. Nolan, second by Amy. Any objections? All right. We are adjourned at 2:41.
Thank you.